Welcome, everyone. I'm just so pleased you're here. Before we jump into the conversation with Jess, I have a few comments I want to make, introduce myself, the topic. Some of you have been here for every one of these webinars, which I've offered since April 2020. Welcome again and welcome back. For others of you, this is your first time. Welcome to you as well. We're a small, important writing community, and I'm just so pleased you're part of it. I started the webinars because of the pandemic and everything getting canceled, and I missed spending time with writers. You are my tribe, and I value very much these webinars. Your questions get me thinking. I read all of the comments at the end of the webinar, and I do appreciate all of your comments in chat. Hello, specifically from beautiful Southwest Florida, where I now live. I have moved, and you'll know if you've been here before that I always show you a photo of a garden or something in a garden. And this time, I'm going to show you two. And as I was preparing, to me, it was made such an important point. I want to explain a little bit what I'm doing. Let me share my screen and you'll see what I'm talking about, I think. So here's the first photo I want to show you. Isn't that beautiful? I showed this some years ago. This is the median on Park Avenue in New York City. They always have beautiful gardening and landscaping and decor. There's one red tulip. It stands out, not because it's red, but because it's not yellow. So here's a photo I took recently. Beautiful. And I just love those little trumpet-like flowers, which are apparently called, I have the name here, alamandas. Do you notice the white flower off to the side? On the right? Isn't that something? And you notice it not because it's white, but because it isn't yellow. So why am I talking about that? Why am I mentioning that? It got me thinking about the importance of standing out in a sea of sameness. And I was reminded of a book by Seth Godin called Purple Cow. The full name of the book is Purple Cow: Transform Your Business by Being Remarkable. It's a classic in the business field. The important part there is the word remarkable. But here's the genesis of the title. He was on a family trip in France, and they were driving in the countryside, and his kids were bored. And then all of a sudden, they saw a purple cow. And then it turned out there was a whole herd of purple cows. And then rounded the corner, and there were some orange cows. Well, the kids were just entranced. Well, it turns out that this is what farmers do to differentiate their herd from the next herd down the block, down the street. The point being that it caught their attention because it stood out, because it was remarkable. But here's the thing. Within an hour or two, oh, there's some green ones. They were bored again because it was no longer remarkable. We as writers have to be remarkable. Our work has to stand out as not just different, but inevitable. That this is the thing you would write. This is the story you tell, and only you can tell it. Remember what publishers are looking for: fresh and familiar, which sounds like an oxymoron, but isn't. If it isn't fresh, it's going to read as derivative. Why would they want it? If it isn't familiar, they're going to think they don't know how to market it. They're not going to know what shelf to tell Barnes & Noble to put it on, what keywords to use in the online world. Therefore, we have to be remarkable to stand out, and yet familiar, recognizable. We know our genre is what it comes down to. And that's what I wanted to say about those photos. I enjoyed that thought, and it got me thinking in to me, a good way when I was preparing. So next, I want to tell you the exciting news. We have webinars coming up for the next 3 months, and then we'll be going on from there. Narrative threads, mastering the art of transitions. This was an attendee request. She said she wanted to learn more about transitions. And I asked her, do you mean like from one paragraph to the next or from one section? And she said all of it. So that's what we're going to do in July on the 13th. Another participant asked for information about descriptions. How much is too much? How do you create a world in a word or a phrase or a paragraph? This is especially important for those of you who write fantasy, horror, where world building is really key. But I'm collecting examples from all sorts of genres, descriptions that bring stories to life. Just really, I'm fascinated by the topic. And then in September, thematic writing. We're going to add depth and richness. We're going to look at symbols and allegory as a way of really ratcheting up our writing. Mystery Mastermind, my small group workshops. One seat is remaining in the Sunday section. It's every 2 weeks for 6 sessions. And that one's on Sundays, starting on the 29th. And I hope that you can join in. I think it's wonderful. People really improve. We're very focused in the lessons. You get 20 minutes each time. It's just for you. And you learn by listening as well. Homework assignments, thought-provoking, hopefully. And we debrief. And I do hope you'll join in. I mentioned last time that my new book on the craft of writing, Beat the Bots, A Writer's Guide to Surviving and Thriving in the Age of AI, would be published in December. Well, we've changed the date. We've changed it to June. So it's June 25, 2025 now. And I want to tell you why by highlighting another, I think, terribly important lesson. And that is, you know how I always say our job as writers is to write unambiguously. There's only one way that a reader can understand what we're talking about. And doing that requires that we, the writer, know what we're trying to express, and then finding the words, the imagery, the metaphors, the symbolism, the allegories, the language to express it well. The word she used, my editor, to describe why they wanted to delay publishing, I think is so perfect. They wanted to move it from December to avoid the election clutter. Isn't clutter just the perfect word? I love it. So, new pub date, June 2025. I think that's wonderful. I should mention YouTube shorties. They come out on Wednesdays. Frequently asked questions, 1 to 3 minutes, where I answer a frequently asked question. And if you subscribe, you get the automatic notification. And that is good for us. It opens up features on YouTube that lets us make the videos even more relevant for you. And then just last mention of custom tailored writing workshops. That means that I speak at industry groups, Sisters in Crime, Mystery Writers of America chapters, Romance Writers of America chapters, California Writers Club, and so on, all the time. MFA, residency, workshops, and the like. And so if you're a member of a group like that, have them get in touch. I'd love to speak to your group too. Thank you. And the last thing I want to mention is, in addition to being a writer and a teacher, a writer of both mysteries and nonfiction, I am also the chair of the Black Orchid Novella Award, and we've just begun our next cycle. The deadline each year is May 31st. I need to change that date to the 25th. This is old news here because we're now in our new cycle. If it's a novella, 15,000 to 20,000 words, the instructions, I'm sure John is putting the link in for the instructions, and we would 100% welcome your submission. And now we're ready to jump into the topic. And the topic today is a conversation with Jess Zafarris. So it is my complete pleasure to introduce Jess. Hello, Jess.
Hi.
And I want to read you just a very brief little bio, but I know other stuff about her too. So I'm going to sneak in additional information as we proceed. One of Jess's fields of expertise is etymology. And we writers, we love etymology. I mean, come on. She has 2 books out on the subject, Words from Hell, and I don't you love the title? Once Upon a Word Origin Dictionary for Kids. And I got that one for my niece last holiday season. She loved it. And actually, my niece got the Words from Hell. She loved it. They're so interesting. And you learn new things without anything that pedantic feeling like no one's dumping information on you. It's written with a novelist's gift, I would say. You are also an editor, a journalist, a content director, game and puzzle maker, and social media professional. So we're going to focus today on the social media aspect, specifically TikTok. And we're going to dip our toe a little bit into etymology because how can I possibly resist?
Always.
But let's start with TikTok. Why TikTok as opposed to Facebook, Instagram? And I know that it's not exclusive, but why is that the one that you're hearing about all the time for writers?
I think that TikTok has a unique proposition in its capacity for niche community. It's a celebration of connection, talent, knowledge, curiosity, creativity. It's also just very accessible. You can open it up and find something that you're passionate about right away. Especially if you're new to TikTok, you may have opened it up and found information and content that you didn't like so much. But the more you engage with it and the more you train it on what you like, the more pertinent your offerings become, just like on YouTube. But you're only seeing, of course, one video at a time. Many folks prefer Instagram. I find the community on TikTok to be more welcoming and curious and intellectually excited about etymology and the work that I post there. I've also found success creating and building brand platforms on TikTok. I launched Adweek's TikTok channel using interesting advertising facts, and that was a lot of fun. Took that from 2,000 followers to 120,000, and then my personal TikTok channel.
Pause.
Okay.
First, I want to make sure everybody knows that Adweek is the industry journal for the advertising world. It is based in New York. It's the big deal. But the reason I wanted to pause was you said interesting advertising facts, and then you talked about the success. So I'm interested in what kind of facts. Like, they have to be non-trivial, right? They have to be engaging.
So it's funny, when I started at Adweek, I was their audience engagement director. So I was running their social platforms and their newsletter program. And I remember one of the editors saying, "So what do you think about this TikTok thing?" And I said, "I'm too old for that." And so, which was hilarious. So eventually I convinced myself that I was not too old for that. I started diving in, and I started just trying things. I looked the content on Adweek's websites, the articles, the reporting that got the most engagement across all platforms. And I started translating that into a collection and aggregate of interesting advertising news each week. So I would come on and I would say, here's do a brief little intro and then cut to clips of funny, entertaining ads and product launches that had happened. So like if Cheetos had a new line of sneakers, or Ryan Reynolds dropped a new ad with his ad agency Maximum Effort for Liquid Death, I would show clips of that and report on, what celebrity partnerships were happening across the industry. And I found that people were really engaged and really excited about that. And many of those videos reached over over a million views.
Holy mackerel.
Mm-hmm.
And you went from 20,000 to
2,000 to 120,000 followers in about a year.
Let's just register that. In about a year.
Mm-hmm.
2,000 to 120,000. No wonder I invited you on. You're obviously the queen. Did you have another example? I interrupted you. I did.
Oh, no.
Okay.
My own channel has about 95,000 followers. I don't post as often as I used to in the early days of the pandemic. I was posting daily, but I found as TikTok has matured, an appetite for more longer form videos has arisen. Originally, their recommended time for a TikTok was 15 to 30 seconds. This year, it's 3 minutes to 10 minutes. And it's because as the platform has matured, so has its audience, and they have similar appetites to YouTube viewers, but still a little bit lower. There are some users who I believe also have access to post up to an hour-long video on TikTok. I can't imagine what my phone storage would do with that, but they're testing out to see where that boundary is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us a little bit about the difference between BookTok and AuthorTok.
Okay, so BookTok and AuthorTok are two niche communities that exist within TikTok. To be clear, although I'm going to talk primarily about BookTok and AuthorTok, which are going to be the most pertinent to this audience, I am technically a member of Etymology Talk. And when I say that, when you start using the platform and start posting content, TikTok will analyze the captions that you put on your videos. It'll analyze the titles that you put on screen, and then the words you're saying to determine what that content is about and pair it with people who would find it interesting. It'll put it on their For You page, which is when you open it up and you see.
And that's just what you were saying before, that when you first log on, you're going to get whatever, but the more you use it, the more tailored it becomes.
Exactly.
It's the other side of it. When you post a video, you can have confidence that it will automatically go to people who are interested in it.
Exactly.
Or may be interested in it.
Right. There's a good chance of it, at least. And I ended up connecting with other people in the grammar, linguistics, books, literature, and etymology space on there. So Grammar Girl, Linguistic Discovery, Knox Study is another one. Rob Words, whom I recently launched a podcast with, all people that I connected with on TikTok.
It makes me smile to think there's something called Etymology Talk.
It's so much fun. Honestly, that community is so curious. I also get pulled into community alongside science creators as well. So professors, classics professors in particular, which is a lot of fun. But BookTok it's largely a community of readers, people who are looking for book recommendations, people who want to talk about their love for reading and books, people who are trying to find new authors, people who love particular tropes and genres as well. And they want to talk and engage with that. AuthorTok,
they like particular tropes. Tell me what you mean.
That's interesting. So there are, if you were to search for the hashtag BookTok or just type BookTok into the search on TikTok, you would find videos about and for book lovers. And then within that, like a subset of that community, there are romance readers. And then within a subset of that community are people who like reading romance novels with particular emotional triggers that connect with other folks. So an example would be friends to lovers or enemies to lovers. These are hashtags that you can find on TikTok, and you will find videos of people talking about books that contain those tropes. So if somebody loves reading books where the lovers start out as enemies, then you can go and talk about those books and find other books by typing in that hashtag and by engaging with that community. AuthorTok, on the other hand, is typically about the craft of writing, the practice of writing, and then finding a relatable community to talk about like the hardships and the fun sides of being an author. So for example, you and I would be good candidates to create AuthorTok focused content.
That's great. Thank you so much for that overview.
Hmm?
Building community, which is, I presume, what we're talking about. I'm backing up just a minute ago. There was a New York Times article, maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, on a self-published author who became a mega huge success via TikTok and now is working with, I believe, Random House. And this is really a self-help kind of orientation. She worked with influencers and became incredibly valuable in the community. So this is going to be a multi-part question. I want to start with this notion of community, because to me it seems really ironic. All of the experts say that people are feeling more and more isolated because they're online so much, as opposed to interacting actually in person, sitting across from someone, having a coffee. And yet we build communities. So there's something, it's oxymoronic. So talk to me about that, and then I'll follow up with other questions.
The wonderful and terrible thing about social media is, as a whole, is that it is a giant conversation that anyone in the world can participate in at any time. So you can have every range of human connection and aversion and everything in between. I have found anecdotally that since the pandemic, I have made more friends on social media than I have had in my entire life. These aren't just mutual followers, but people I've started book clubs with but haven't met in person. People I get lunch with sometimes in New York City now, fellow creators on TikTok. Found my podcast co-host on TikTok. He's also a fellow creator. Contributed to a series of New York Times columns thanks to my social media profiles. So I think it comes down to the spirit with which you approach any social media platform. For me, it's a tool where like-minded people and people I admire lift one another up and share things they care about, as well as an entertainment tool. For some people, it's just a glimpse into other people's lives. I also make a point of not engaging with toxicity when I see it. There's a delete button on TikTok for comments that are ugly or in good faith, or not presented in good faith. There are block buttons across most platforms. I used to be very active on Twitter, but because some of that toxicity is no longer as controllable, I don't spend as much time there as I used to. So I think it's about picking your audience and your crowd and curating it such that it is supportive and curiosity based and also positivity based. You get what you give. So if you go out into the social media space and you are as negative as some of the other comments, then that's what you're going to receive in return. But if you enter in a spirit of positivity, of joy, of curiosity and excitement and learning, then you'll also find people who are looking for it there.
That's beautiful. That's beautifully put and just very affirming. So now talk about influencers and the role of, actually I have a sub question before that one. And that was, you've used the term creator.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean simply that you create videos and put them up there?
That is true. If you create social media content for an audience and you are attempting to engage with that audience through that content, you are a creator. Influencer and creator there's a Venn diagram between them. And I have been called, for example, a mid-size creator or a micro influencer. Influencers we tend to associate with like the beauty space. There'll be people who create videos about makeup products or fashion, and they'll have millions of followers and they'll have brand deals, which brand deals and millions of followers can also happen to your everyday creator. I think it just comes down to connotation. TikTok played a large role in elevating the term creator over influencer because it meant to prevent gatekeeping of of content creation. So I think on Instagram in particular, prior to TikTok's rise, there were many influencers who seemed inaccessible. They were more on a pedestal, separate from your average person, either in the way that they were engaging with brands or their appearance for a variety of reasons. And TikTok democratized in many ways online content creation. And now Instagram itself is leaning into the same type of content creation that has arisen on TikTok. And so is YouTube with YouTube Shorts.
Got it. Yeah, interesting. And so now explain how you, as an author, how do you get your book in front of an influencer to hopefully have them use their power to boost your sales?
So I'm probably a bad person to ask this question because for my personal content, my goal is typically not to reach influencers, but to connect with everyday users who love words. For my job, I work with influencers pretty often. I invite them to speak on stages at conferences, to develop content together as a partner. I usually reach out to them via DM or hop into their comments to say hi. Granted, in the process of building a community on TikTok and on a variety of other platforms, I have connected with fellow influencers and creators in my space. Like I was on Hank Green's podcast, and he has a huge audience on TikTok and on YouTube. He asked his audience one time, why do the questions, or why do the words that, there, and then answer the questions what, where, and when? And I was like, I have a good etymology answer for this. So the answer to, getting in front of Hank Green is to look for opportunities to engage in large-scale conversations that are pertinent to your knowledge and expertise and that you can contribute to in a meaningful way. A lot of people will be like, no, I need to use the viral sound that's going around, but does it make sense for your audience? Or should you look for an opportunity to join a conversation that's more pertinent to you?
What's interesting about that is it's very similar to something I teach when I'm teaching communications about networking. I hate the term networking. It sounds manipulative, and often people are, in fact, manipulative in their efforts to network.
It feels transactional, right?
Yes, that's right. As opposed to building relationships, right? If you build a relationship, of course, someone's going to try to help you. But if you just say, I need your help out of the blue, anyway.
No, I agree.
Sounds the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find the term influencer to be a little loftier in its expectations and a little more transactional in its expectations. Mm-hmm.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is the only way for us authors to use TikTok to boost sales is to stop thinking about sales and start thinking about building a community, building relationships, contributing in a meaningful way.
That is my preference, and that is also typically what you'll hear experts, even in commerce-based spaces, say. So when I was working at Adweek, I also interviewed many people and wrote a lot of stories about trends on TikTok and across social platforms. And in the process, I made friends with the social team behind Mondelez brands. So that's like Oreo and Nutter Butter. And they have fantastic TikTok channels. And their TikTok channels don't say, buy these Oreos. Their TikTok channels have the Oreo dressed up in a little outfit doing a dance. The Nutter Butter channel makes peanut jokes that are sometimes a little off color. Like it helps to be relatable, relevant, and entertaining. And I find that that's a better way of gaining people's attention and respect and creating a dialogue than simply being like, buy my book.
Makes perfect sense. Speaking of buying books, TikTok has a store. Tell us a little bit about how that works.
So there are a few different monetization features on TikTok. One is the creator fund. When you join, if you get up to I think it's 10,000 followers, but it's been a minute since I've looked that up. There's a large pool of money called the creator fund that's divided among all creators on TikTok over a certain amount of followers. You can sign up to get a segment of this collective fund based on how many views and engagements your videos get. Only the largest accounts can expect to earn a lot here. In the 4 years that I have been on TikTok, I have made a total of, I think, $320. So like, it's obviously not a huge amount. It was in the early days of TikTok when there were fewer creators on the platform. I could expect to make like $1.25 off of a video. Nowadays, it's maybe like 2 cents, even if it gets upwards of 50,000 views. However, there are a few other options. You can promote videos. You can add buttons. You can basically pay in the same way that you would do a paid post on Facebook or Instagram. And you can add a button that links out to another site. The trick here is that once you've paid, TikTok will sometimes want you to pay again. So many creators say that it results in the platform suppressing organic content performance. So your other videos might suddenly take a little bit of a dive when you don't pay to get them in front of people. I've found that to be about 50-50 true. I tried that feature when I was working at Adweek, and I used it not to generate sales of anything, but to get newsletter subscribers. And I think I spent like $120 and got like 2,000 subscribers. So it was pretty good ROI for what I was looking for. Other people find that, if you sell a product in particular that's not a book, if you are an artist, then you may find that having more monetization-based content may deliver better ROI. And as you mentioned, there's also TikTok Shop, which is you can integrate a mini store into your TikTok profile so people can shop directly in the app. This doesn't work as well for traditionally published authors like myself, like yourself, but it can be a great resource for indie authors. Like fantasy author AP Beswick made enough on TikTok to quit his day job and start writing full time. And he used TikTok Shop by selling the book as a product in that store. And in that experience, you can tap on the product and buy it directly in the app instead of going to a different site.
What kind of book was he writing?
It's a fantasy book.
And why wouldn't that work for traditionally published authors?
Typically with traditionally published authors, your objective is to send people to another location to buy the book. I suppose if you have a large archive of them at home and want to handle shipping and everything, then you are welcome to do that as well. But I would find that to be more work than I wanted to do.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. There could be a creative opportunity to sell like signed copies or something though. You're giving me ideas.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It can tell wheels rusty, but they're turning.
Right. They introduced this e-commerce feature in 2022 for people who make and sell products. It historically has been more successful in Asian countries where TikTok is allowed and used than in the US, but that has picked up in the last year in particular. And I've seen more and more creators who are also creatives who make physical products successfully using TikTok Shop.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any control on pricing, guarantees, warranty?
That is a fantastic question, and I am not the one qualified to answer it, but I'd be happy to find some resources and send them to you to share with the audience.
Thank you. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll try that signed copy thing as a test, and I'll find out for myself.
Yeah, that's interesting. You have to, yeah. It kind of, it's what you said before. It was more work than you wanted to do. You have to decide where you want to spend your time and energy.
Exactly. I have a day job too.
Yeah, me too.
Right.
Time college, yeah, lecturer. So, yeah. We've talked a lot about what to do. What shouldn't people do? What are some don'ts?
That's a good question.
You already named some. Don't be rude, nasty, mean.
Yes.
Don't say buy my book.
Also, well, you can at the end. Some people do. I would say deliver value first before selling. So give people a reason. Tell them what the experience of reading your book will be like. help them immerse themselves in the things that they will love about it while they're reading it, and then be like, buy it. So with my channel, primarily I post bite-sized etymology facts, and my books are full of bite-sized etymology facts. In fact, some of the content that I have put into the books has been in part steered by what people responded to most on TikTok. I just dive deeper and pull in more resources and make the content longer form. But so it can be a great educational tool and help you shape your process. So a couple of other don'ts. Don't tolerate the haters. Go ahead and get them out of your block them, delete them. Some people are going to operate in bad faith. Kind, be inclusive. TikTok is a very inclusive space. It doesn't tolerate haters, and if you are unkind, you might go viral for reasons you don't want to, and that's bad. Keep it simple. You can try a 15-second video if you want to try a new format. You can try a 60-second video. You don't have to worry too much about production quality or editing perfection. This is what kept me away from YouTube for a little while, is I'm not an extremely skilled video editor, and I have perceived that a lot of people on YouTube have higher quality video production. TikTok is not that. You can go viral by laying in your bed and holding your phone over your face with no makeup on. There's no concern for that. It's about authenticity and a real look into your life. So if you manufacture it too much or make it seem scripted, people will not respond to it as well because they feel that you're being inauthentic. I hate that term because it's a little overplayed, but at the same time, it remains true. Being genuine is what people want on that platform. Let's see. I would say don't be afraid to take risks. Try out a bunch of different things to see what kinds of formats work. I do explainer videos with no music. Some people might do better by doing memes, by trying out whatever the latest, jumping into discourse. You can stitch and duet videos, which means you can combine your videos with other people's in order to create a conversation out of it. You can create videos that reply to comments on your videos. So you can make a whole series that are linked together in the comments that people can follow. I would say try not to participate in trends if they don't really fit. You can try whatever you'd like, but forcing a meme or forcing content format into your voice, it's not going to work as well. But do experiment, see what works. And if you can always delete the video or turn it on private only or individual view only if you find that it's not working out well. I would say don't worry about being able to keep up with every feature and trend. I do basically one type of video. Lots of people do different types of videos. Also, don't sweat it if your video is a little glitchy in editing. It's okay if it's a little wonky. And definitely don't ignore your followers' feedback, because follow within reason. If people are giving you unhelpful feedback, you can ignore that. But if people who genuinely enjoy your content are like, I'd really like to see this, go with it, run with it. If they're saying, hey, could you, change your background so that it's a little less distracting? Can you hold your phone a little more still so that I'm not a little nauseous when I'm watching your video? Listen to those folks.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This has been enormously helpful because it's a wide lens view. I mean, we're not logging on to TikTok to say, how do we do this thing, or look at examples. And I appreciate that. I'm sure there are plenty of resources to teach people how to do that. But to know the wider lens, the bigger picture, value and use and protocols and best practices is, I think, invaluable. So thank you for that.
Of course. There's also a wonderful resource. It's usually released for marketers and advertisers, but I think it's great for anybody. TikTok releases an annual report called What's Next, and it tells you what kinds of features they're going to release. It gives you stats about the current communities. It tells you what's popular, what to try, and what might be exciting down the road. So I highly recommend checking it out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to switch gears a little bit because now I'm going to ask you to put your author hat on. Talk to me a little bit about why etymology. Where did that come from?
Good question. I get this question a lot. First of all, I've always been a big reader. I've always wanted to ask why. I've always dug into meaning. And I can give you the boring answer is in undergrad, I was an English literature major with minors in anthropology and Arabic. And I have a master's in journalism. So digging deeper is kind of inherent to who I am. And I did a good deal of coursework on the development of English language in literature. So Old English in Beowulf and Middle English in Chaucer and early modern English in Shakespeare, and learning why those language features evolved and the differences between modern dialects as well. But the fun answer is that when I was in high school, I had a French teacher named Nanette Quinn. She has since left us. She passed away of cancer a few years ago, but she was a hugely influential person in the Memphis, Tennessee community. She has a 5K named after her. And she taught me as much about life as she did about French. And one day we were assigned a reading from the children's book Le Petit Prince, The Little Prince. And we came to class and we started reading through the passage, going over the reading that we had done. And we came to a word that hadn't been in our vocabulary list. And so Madam Quinn asked us what that word meant. And no one could answer it because none of us had looked it up. And we hadn't, and so she exploded. She was such a vivacious human. She was like, "Why would you do this? Why would you have Google search with you? You have a dictionary, you've got this, you've got that, you have all these resources that have this information in it, and instead you chose to remain ignorant and not ask why and not dig deeper." So maybe I've been trauma induced to like always ask the next step of a question and find out why a word means what it does, why it's spelled the way it is. But I am so grateful that she gifted me with that urge to remain curious.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. It's a wonderful story about the power of a teacher.
Absolutely. She was incredible and also helped many of the words that entered English after the Norman invasion, of course, are Latin-derived words that came via French. So about 60% of our vocabulary is from Latin, and most of that came through French. So learning about French can be a great way to help step into etymology of many English words.
And talk a little bit about your path to publication. How did you become published?
I was fortunate to have been approached by publishers for both of my books, so I didn't have to do the querying and agenting and pitching or the self-publishing process. However, I was the content director at Writer's Digest for a while, so I absolutely know how those processes go, and they are just as valid as any other path to publication, and in many ways more admirable than mine because I didn't do the work to get there. So
Were you worried about your contract, or because you'd been at Writer's Digest, you knew red flag issues in your contract?
So I'll get to that in just a second. The way I was approached about my first book was I have a blog called Useless Etymology, and I had been posting to it for a while. And my objective when I create etymology content is to take what can be a relatively dry subject and help unlock the wonder by making it accessible and exciting and fun. So that was my goal for my blog. And when my publisher approached me, they wanted to create a children's etymology dictionary or word origin dictionary. And they found the tone of my blog to be suitable for that format, which was lovely. I was very happy to do that. Then for my second book, I was on a podcast with I was speaking about Middle English, and the producer of the podcast represented my current publisher, Chambers, which publishes dictionaries and word lover resources for a broad range of things. They're owned by Hachette, which is a UK-based gigantic publisher that also exists within the US. And they asked me if I had considered writing another book. I pitched two, and they accepted both. I had already worked up book proposals, and I was planning on approaching agents, but they were like, "Nope, this is great. Let's go with it." And one of them is Words from Hell, which I wrote because the reason I pitched it is because while I was writing my children's book, I found there were many words I couldn't include because they had dark origins. They were either violent or they were racist or they were sexist or they were messy. So, and I also found that my TikTok followers liked when I included a little bit of spice into my content or addressed the origins of swear words and words that had, historically exciting and war-riddled histories. So that's how that came together. Hang on. You asked me a question that I was going to get
About
to.
the contract.
Contracts. There we go. So when I signed on with Chambers, my editor recommended that I join the Society of Authors. Now, because my publisher is British, I am now technically a member of the Society of British Authors. And they provide for I believe it's about $120 a year. They provide contract review. And I found that was really useful. My first contract.
I'm going to just interrupt for 1 second.
Yeah.
The Authors Guild in this country, if you are a member, they provide the contract review and legal services for free.
Yes.
So that for many people, that is worth doing.
I highly recommend it. The resources are wonderful. They put on good programming too. So definitely recommend that, especially if you don't already have legal advice or contract review easily accessible in your life.
I'm going to ask one last quick question, and then I'm going to open it up to audience questions. So my last question is, give us an example of a literary etymology fact that will tickle our fancy.
Well, you mentioned oxymoron earlier. You said the word oxymoron. And one of my favorite facts about that one is that oxymoron is itself an oxymoron. Classic oxymorons include tight slacks, jumbo shrimp, original copy, farewell reception. But the word itself is made up of Greek words meaning sharp or clever and dull or stupid.
So
that's a fun.
That's great.
It's a good one.
Thank you. John, do we have any questions?
I see a few here.
Yeah, we do. And I'll get the big obvious one out of the way first. There's a few different versions of it in the queue already. Do you have any concerns about TikTok and the current political state in the US regarding forcing to sell, banning, Chinese ownership, all of that stuff?
Fantastic question. And I knew this would come up. So American lawmakers did pass a bill to ban the platform from app stores in order to, the objective here, there were concerns about data security and misinformation, but most experts agree that this mostly comes down to forcing a divestment of TikTok's US business from Chinese parent company ByteDance. And that's because less about the data security and more about the fact that 7 million American businesses are active on the platform, and going through the ban would cost the US economy like $6 billion. So what needs to happen next? Obviously, the ban happened, but TikTok didn't disappear overnight. The way it would work is if it were fully enacted, it would be removed from app stores. And then over time, your app would stop updating itself, and then it would basically be unusable. However, the likelihood that will happen is small. And most experts agree that what will happen next is over the next maybe 5 years, they'll need to negotiate and pass additional legislation allowing for the sale and divestment of the American market. It's possible it could be banned, but that seems to not be the objective due to the money that's behind it. It's also a huge resource for encouraging voting and civic participation, which some states don't like that, other states do. So there will be a continued legislative war over TikTok over the next 3 to 5 years. And whether it's banned is not entirely certain, but my money is on them finding a way to buy the US market. The reason that data security is not as big of an issue as it seemed to be during the discussions around this is because American TikTok data is not currently stored in China. It's currently stored in a combination of Virginia and Singapore. So that was more of a red herring and more of a means of getting support behind the bill. And the bigger issue is they want a bigger share of that tech pie.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Someone wanted to know if you could just give a quick thoughts on the difference between TikTok and YouTube, and if there is one that is the better for authors in general.
That's a great question. I think it has to do with your priorities and how you want to approach your content. So if you're more comfortable creating long form, highly produced video that you have a lot of control over, YouTube, I think, is great. I resisted YouTube for a long time because as I said, I found it kind of intimidating with the production value. But as a matter of fact, about 8 weeks ago, I started a YouTube channel around my new podcast, Words Unravelled. And it happens that my co-host is a fantastic video and audio editor. And we also have another audio editor who helps us out with that too. So now that I have someone to help me with the production value, I have found it to be very successful. Monetization wise, it's also far and away way better than TikTok. I've already made significantly more from the 8 weeks on YouTube than I ever have on TikTok, like tenfold more. So I highly recommend that if you are willing to put in the time and effort, but it didn't cost nothing. We've spent time, we've invested dollars. I got, better equipment. I'm talking into a mic that was a little bit pricey because I wanted to create a better YouTube experience. TikTok, I can make one of those any day, anytime in about an hour. I find that fun, accessible. I like combining it. I don't love Instagram. Lots of people do, and there's nothing wrong with it. The Bookstagram community is also very invested in finding their next read, in buying books, and some of the monetization features on Instagram are a lot better. I just don't like the community over there because they're kind of mean.
What is the monetization in YouTube?
On YouTube, it works similarly. So you can basically YouTube, if you allow it, will allow you to have it put ads in your videos. So in a 30-minute video, if someone isn't paying for YouTube Premium, then they would see periodic ads throughout. And YouTube tries to make them pertinent, and you can also see which ones YouTube is pairing with your videos and tell them if you don't like it, and not have those attached to your videos, which is very nice if you don't like a particular brand or have moral reasons for not having a certain advertiser on your videos. You do need like a baseline of followers also there to get to unlock monetization. And I don't know how that works because it seems to be inconsistent across creators. Rob and I were monetized right away, and it might be because he has like 400,000 YouTube followers already, and they knew that his content was attached to our podcast series, but I'm not sure because we only had like 5,000 followers by the time it monetized. Mm. You can also, I believe, link and sell products in the same way that you can on Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah, monetization on YouTube is an interesting thing because it's actually kind of a rolling window thing. It is a combination of current followers, a combination of watch time over, I want to say, a 90-day window.
Oh, that makes sense.
And a combination of the amount of content you post. So it's kind of a ratio game. Mm-hmm. You can actually, by posting too much, hurt your chances of monetization by lowering the amount of time people watch compared to what you're producing. There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on behind there for a numbers person.
That makes sense. It's we post weekly at the same time on the same day.
Yep.
And then we have found that most of our followers will watch the entire video, at least based on the numbers we've seen on the back end and then the comments that we get. Whereas TikTok, you can post 10 times a day if you want.
Okay. And actually, with the last question, someone asked, is there a way that TikTok allows you to see and track how many views you've had and which of your videos are doing better or worse? How much information do you get?
Yes. As soon as you you set up your account as a creator, you are able to see analytics on all of your videos. You can even see the breakdown of various demographics that watch your videos if people have shared that info. Interestingly, on TikTok, my primary audience, like the lion's share of my audience, is men over 50. And I think it's because history and word origins tend to appeal to those folks. And I also think it has to do with the kinds of content I post. Like if I talk about nautical word origins or ones that are connected to wars and get a little naughty. So I think that's I think that appeals to that audience as well. Interestingly, that's also the audience that reads my my Words from Hell book too. So that's a lot of fun. And also, I'd be happy to, if we didn't get to all these questions, I'd be so happy to review them via email and send over like text-based answers as well.
Well, thank you. And I'm already thinking, if you're going to try that experiment with a signed book in the TikTok store, we're going to want a little article about that.
Oof, I would love to. All right, well, let me get on it then.
Any other questions, John?
Oh, yes. We still got a solid 8 to 10 here. Someone wanted to know, how much does age count in TikTok? Is it possible to start a TikTok account not being, young and hip?
Absolutely. I follow a variety of older folks. One of my favorite followees, one of my favorite people that I follow on TikTok is his name is he goes by Legal Dad, and he answers questions about legal situations. Another one is artist who, if I had to guess his age, is maybe 75, and he posts videos of himself painting, but then also talks about like philosophy while he's doing it. There are a couple of fashion influencers who are elderly ladies who I absolutely love. There's also a great community of like older queer folks who talk about their experiences throughout history, which is very cool.
Thank you.
Excellent. Someone says, if you're not tech savvy, where do you learn to do videos with words on top of them or whatever that's called? This all feels very intimidating to me.
That's a good question. I find TikTok to be relatively easy to pick up. I wasn't good at it at first. Like, video editing was not my jam before I started trying and experimenting on TikTok. I do find the interface user friendly. What you can do is you can create drafts and see how and play with the drafts. So what I would do if you're trying to familiarize yourself with the tools is you can look up tutorials. You can type in like TikTok tutorial in TikTok or on YouTube or on another platform. But I would recommend opening the app, recording like 60 seconds worth of video, and it can be anything. You can just be sitting there. You can do anything you want, but then try fiddling with the features. Try adding a sound. Try creating putting text on top of your video and then sliding to see or to put that text over a particular part of the screen. Add a sticker and just create a draft that can be your test case. That way you can workshop it. You can play with it. But there are a lot of tutorials out there too.
Well, and I'll say that, like, if you're completely going into this blank, a lot of this stuff you see that looks all shiny and fancy is built into the platform.
It is.
Like,
yes,
there
I do all my
are people
editing
that are
in there.
producing a ton of stuff externally.
Mhm.
But TikTok in particular has a very capable editor built in.
It does. Yes, you can upload video segments or upload pre-produced video. That's totally fine. I prefer to edit in the app. I find it very easy to use. The one thing that I would advise on this is like try to keep the number of elements you have in the video manageable. I made a video like 2 weeks ago. I filmed the video. It's about the origins of different dog breeds, and I covered like 20 different dog breeds. And now I'm like slowly and painstakingly adding the text showing the roots of each word to the video, and it's taken me hours. And I'm like, because I made the video so long that the sliders to time the elements that I'm adding are very tiny, and my thumbs are too big.
Back on the engagement and community side of things, someone says, if you're in so many subgroups and subsets and communities, do you find you end up having to spend hours or days in the various talk subgroups? How do you manage your time and avoid distraction?
One of the great things, or one of the things that simplifies TikTok, is that it only shows you one thing at a time. So when I say that I'm in a community, I don't particularly ask to be shown content for that particularly community in a given day. So when I go on TikTok, if there is a viewer, I go on my FYP at my For You page and start scrolling and see what I like. And I like things that I do and I dislike. You can also tell it you don't like a piece of content. You can hit there's a little ... ellipsis, and you can tap that and tell it, don't show me that anymore. And it won't show you videos like that anymore. Or you can block a creator or hide a creator so that they don't show up in your FYP. When I make a video, it chooses who is going to see that. Now I can tag people in if I particularly want if I want legal dad to see it because I have a question about a legal term, then I can tag him in the video and he can tell me what he thinks about that. I follow a classics professor too, and he and I sometimes combine videos or react to each other. So I do have people that I react with regularly, but generally speaking, it shows my videos to people who have liked my videos before or who have liked the videos of other people that interact with me.
Oh, I'm jumping in just to ask a follow-up. How much time would you say you spend every day on TikTok?
Lately, I have been bad about it. I've been posting maybe one video a week, if that. And that's mostly because it's a time commitment. I've got the day job gets in the way. I plan events and I have to write articles for the sites and manage my team, things like that. So it depends on how much time I have available. Usually, if I'm making a video, it depends on the length of the video and the involvement of the features, like that dog breed video that's been sitting in my in my drafts for weeks. But I plan to make one later today that will be shorter. It will probably take maybe 30 minutes to shoot the video. And the reason I take 30 minutes, some people will just you can pick up your video or your phone, shoot, and then post. But the reason I do this is so that I can control, I can rephrase if I say, if I am halting like this, or if I have a misplaced word, or if I want to make sure that my phrasing is on point or that I've got my dates correct. And I want to make sure that my details and information are right on point.
So that's how long you're spending doing it.
Mhm.
How long are you spending observing, viewing others?
I probably spend maybe 20-minute chunks a day. Not too much time. You can spend all day on there if you want to, but my attention span for TikTok usually lasts 15 to 20 minutes.
Thank you. Back to you, John.
And also, just to kind of add as well, if you're worried about that sort of thing, there are business profile TikTok accounts and personal TikTok accounts.
Yes.
One thing you could make a point to do as well is don't browse your personal interests on your business TikTok, because then your For You page isn't a nice, hyper, focused, it's all about books and people in your genre and people who you're interacting with. Next thing you know, there's quilts and gardens and home brewing and who knows what going in your business feed, and it's taking you that much longer to get through it.
Exactly.
So that's one thing to keep in mind as well, is you can separate them. There's no problem with multiple accounts or any of that. So take advantage of that.
Absolutely. You can also have multiple accounts. I was running Adweek's TikTok account at the same time I was running my own. So that's very doable.
Which ties into the question, can you use a pen name on TikTok?
Absolutely. You can use any name you want. You can tell the world you're Cthulhu. You can be Julius Caesar.
I will say that in the one caveat to that is if you're doing TikTok Shop. TikTok Shop does require you, because obviously there's money changing hands and you're fulfilling orders. They do require your pretty standard verification, basically a W-9 plus some form of visual ID.
And to join the Creator Fund, you also have to take a picture of your driver's license or other form of ID.
And someone actually asked in chat, I don't believe it made it into the queue, do you know where the funds from the Creator Fund come from?
It's a collective pool. I used to know the answer to this question, but I'm not sure. I think that it's the larger revenue that TikTok creates, and they send X% of it into the Creator Fund, which is why as the community has gotten larger, the pool is divided among so many pie slices that you get less and less over time.
Okay, someone wanted to know, is there a TikTok community for authors of short stories, creative nonfiction, or poetry?
There's a TikTok for everything. I guarantee it. If I would type in short stories, I would type in poetry. There are tons of poets on TikTok. So highly recommend that. In fact, poetry performances are quite popular. I know there's a creator, and I'm blanking on her name, but she reads Middle English poetry, which is lovely, and she'll add music to it. There's another one who makes Middle English recipes, which is very fun. So there's a niche for everything.
Okay. Someone wanted to know if you could comment on TikTok versus Reddit for building niche communities. Do you have any experience with Reddit?
Tons. I've been on Reddit for like 13 years. In fact, I started posting etymology content on Reddit a long time ago in the etymology subreddit. So I would join a community there rather than building one. That's my personal opinion on it, because it doesn't, like, they've made some ill-fated attempts to value particular creators, and I'd say the most successful attempt at that resulted in the comics and artists subreddits, where like a regular person will contribute frequently. There's one named, I want to say like El Guapo or something, who shows up all the time. There's also like people who have jumped into the comments and built profiles there. There's one called Shitty Watercolor who will draw your comment as a well, it's a very nice watercolor, but he didn't used to be great there. I would say it's a decent platform if you want to talk about your books and passions. The writer community is very fun and relatable there. I wouldn't use it, or I don't particularly see it as a sales tool. And I don't know that it's as good for brand loyalty, because it tends to, and when I say brand loyalty, I mean like your personal brand, because it tends to be more focused on the content itself than the person behind it.
Okay.
But I will say I have like 400,000 something karma on Reddit. Not proud of that, but true.
Well, it says, I have a couple of photos that have gotten over 500,000 views. How will I know if any of these viewers want to buy my book? Most of my short videos only have, say, 1,000 views or so. What's a good number of views to achieve on a consistent basis to feel successful?
That's a good question. I think it kind of depends on how you feel about it. I usually benchmark mine as if I hit 10,000 views, then I consider it a successful video. But some people have belong to a more niche content group. Some people prefer to have a more intimate relationship with the people who follow them, or just follow their friends. And so 1,000 views from people they know is successful for them. So it's not always necessarily a transactional relationship. Sometimes it's just a space where you want to express yourself.
And I don't know if you can confirm this or not, but I've seen on multiple places regarding TikTok that especially in the beginning of your TikTok profile, those numbers can kind of ebb and flow a bit anyway, as TikTok figures out your place in the big picture.
Exactly. But I'd say the most annoying thing is when I post a video that isn't about etymology and that goes viral because it has nothing to do with my platform. And I'm like, dang it. And then suddenly my notifications are cluttered up and I don't know what to do with that. Like one time I asked people for, I think it was a pet peeve, and shared a pet peeve that was roughly language focused, but didn't really have anything to do with my platform. And it went viral. And I was like, I put so much work into my etymology videos, and this is one that I took no effort in creating when it took off. So.
Okay. Someone wanted to know, as a new author on TikTok, how do you attract followers? Do I identify different keywords about my writing in my profile, or is it some sort of search mechanism? Do you have any recommendations for that initial boost of visibility?
I would first take a look at what people are creating in your niche. Say if you're a sci-fi or fantasy author, go look at, like, search for sci-fi TikTok or sci-fi novels, and start liking and commenting on the videos of creators who are already working in that space. That way they'll show up on your FYP when you open it. You can also like start asking questions and see what people respond to. I would just honestly start creating content too around it. You can start by talking about some of your favorite books. You can start by talking about your writing process. You can offer advice. You can share your inspiration. You can share quotes. You can create videos about the characters that you've built, or strategies for plotting, or simply the ennui of being stuck mid-draft. So there's plenty of that, and there's space for all of it. The more you can connect with other creators in your space, though, the better your content will perform too, because it tends to, when you uplift others, it also uplifts you. There's definitely a rising tide, all ships dynamic there.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question, John. And then for the rest, maybe just kindly offered to email us back the answers, and I'll record them as YouTube shorties.
Okay. Someone says, okay, you've piqued my curiosity. Why do that there and then answer where, what, and when?
This is a long answer. I will let you look up the there's a video pinned to the top of my TikTok profile where you can get the short answer to this. The long answer is in the podcast episode on Dear Hank and John. But briefly, what, where, and when are interrogatives, as you know. If we don't know which direction, time, or place something is, we need an interrogative so that we can ask someone else. This is a recurring trait of Indo-European languages to have some sort of root or word-forming element or morpheme that is used to mean, huh? And you can stick it onto other word elements to turn them into question words. And that's what's happened with that, there, and then are our base words here. And then the interrogative WH has been attached to them.
All right, I can't stand it. What was the French word in the class that no one knew?
I can't remember. All I remember is the trauma of getting in trouble for it.
That's hysterical. Jess, thank you so much. It's been terrific. You are just a fount of knowledge and very generous and forthcoming with your information. I'm very appreciative.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is always fun. I love talking about this subject, and I'd be happy to chat with anyone here. One of the fastest ways to get in touch with me is actually LinkedIn, because I have it has more focused responses. So you can find me there, Jess Zafarris. You can email me at jeszzafarris@gmail.com. Check out my blog, Useless Etymology. So anyway, I would love to chat with anyone individually too. So thank you, Jane. This has been wonderful. Love your show, love your work, and love your books too.
Oh, thank you so much. John, take care, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Indeed.
Thank you all.
I have posted links, just so everyone knows, to Jess's social media profiles and her books in chat, if you'd like to pop over there. Also, there will be a link for Jane's event listing if you'd like to sign up for the next few events. Otherwise, keep an eye out on Jane's YouTube, janecleland.com/YouTube, for the replay, probably early or mid to late next week. And obviously, if you subscribe and click the little notification bell there, they'll just tell you when it's ready, as opposed to having to keep an eye out for it. So that's always convenient. And with that, unless Jane has any closing thoughts, I think we can let you go back to your weekend.
I'm reading and writing, everyone. See you next month.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, John and Jane.